Good evening. Will the Board of Trustees, Pasadena Area Community College District for April 24th, 2019 come to order? Roll call, please.
Dr. Fellow,
Here.
Mr. Osterling,
Here.
Mr. Hillsman, Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Chen Lao,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Ms. Wah,
Here.
Ms. Rod.
Thank you. Our closed session items this evening deal with Government Code 54957, Public Employee Appointment, Director of the Small Business Development Center, and instructors in Japanese and Chemistry, and Government Code 54956.9, Conference with Legal Counsel regarding existing litigation of Jennifer Cooper versus the Pasadena Area Community College District, and then finally Government Code 54957, Evaluation of Employee, the Superintendent President. Is there any comments before we go into closed session? Seeing none, the board will go into closed session at this time.
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Chen Lao,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Ms. Wah,
Here.
Ms. Rod.
Thank you.
Not here? She's sick.
Ms. Brown, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly. Please stand. Raise your hands under your heart and repeat. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
For all.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Wah, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. This is a time for any introductions. Do you have any this evening?
I don't think I do have any.
Any of the board members have any introductions? Okay, we will move on. This is the time for public comments on non-agenda items. Our secretary is here.
He is not here. Do we have any?
Do we have any?
No comments.
Very good, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the board for March 20th, 2019.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from Ms. Wah, second by myself. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We also have to approve the minutes of the spring retreat for April 6th, 2019. I'll entertain a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Ms. Wah. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Let's see, board committees reporting out.
Okay, great. Who would like to go first?
Me?
All right.
Oh, that was a question.
That was the question.
Okay, darn, now I have to go find those notes again. All right, hang on, I'm almost there. Oh, here we are. Okay, so the Legislative Committee met on April 8th. Trustee Hillsman, Trustee Osterling, and myself. So we did a review of the meetings, the conferences that were held in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. So one of the things that came out of, the discussion points that came out of the D.C. meetings was in meeting with Representative Napolitano's staff, because we are recommending very similar things across the region, both at the national level and the state level, and that is increase in financial aid for our students, increase in the higher reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, increase in Pell Grants, a loosening of some of the restrictions to make it more accessible to our students. It was recommended that we might convene the legislators regionally so that we come as one voice, and that when they go back to Washington, they can serve as a regional voice advocating, and also at the state level. So the committee members all agreed to that, and Director Buckelheid, I believe, is going to be working on convening such a session. We will include some of our local legislators, such as Jimmy Gomez, and Senator Portantino, as well as, let's see, who else did we include? Oh, Supervisor Barger, who has been very involved in many of the issues that do touch on the education
You mentioned Napolitano.
So Napolitano it was her staff who recommended that we do this. We will include Representative Napolitano, Representative Schiff, and Representative Chu, and I have been in touch with all three of them, and they have agreed that they think this is a good way for us to approach our advocacy, and they are happy to come in and participate. The committee also reviewed an update of the Sarafian U building, and I know that President Janas has had some updates on that, so will you report on that?
Yeah, I can report on it. So we received word a couple of days ago that our building did get put back on the list of the Assembly Budget Committee and the Budget Committee of the Education Committee of Assembly, and it was voted on and it came out and it is on the list. So that's great news for us because at least it's on the Assembly side. And right now we are working on possibly having a trip to Sacramento next Wednesday, myself and former State Senator and former President and former Chancellor Jack Scott and I actually going and meeting with our senators to talk about getting our building onto the Senate side of the budget equation. So we've made a little bit of progress.
Thank you, Dr. Janas. And so in addition to that, there were several bills that have been discussed at the state level through the league, and those were brought to the table for the PCC Legislative Committee to review. And although it is the policy of the board not to support or give public support for any bills unless it directly impacts PCC and our students, there were several bills which we felt did meet that criteria, and it's reflected on the board agenda for resolutions for some of those bills. So among those that we discussed were Assembly Bill 30, which is authored by our Assembly member here in Pasadena, Assemblymember Holden, on the career access pathways and partnerships. The committee does recommend support for the college's engagement in the dual enrollment programs. And this bill makes several changes to the existing college and career pathways dual enrollment program by deleting the requirement to present the dual enrollment partnership agreement as an informational item at a separate open meeting before taking public comment and then acting. So it then eliminates us having to go twice for approval to both boards, which will then delay that MOU agreement. So it speeds up the process a bit. The units completed by a pupil may count towards determining a pupil's registration priority for enrollment and course registration at a community college, and require the chancellor on or before July 31st, 2020, to revise the special part-time student application process to allow pupils to complete one application for the duration of their attendance at a community college as a special part-time student participating in a CCAP partnership agreement. Extend the operation of the program indefinitely, so to eliminate the sunsetting clause. Another bill that was discussed, which we did not take a position on, was Assembly Bill 302 by Assemblymember Berman, and this was regarding parking lots and the homeless students. So there was a lot of discussion both at the state level as well as here at PCC, and so the league takes a neutral position on it. We also take a neutral position. There are many colleges throughout the system that may be supporting this, but we think that there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. We have a lot of questions about the funding, the sustainability of a program that this type of a bill might need to address before we would take a position on it. However, Assembly Bill 612 by Assemblymember Weber addresses the CalFresh restaurant meals program. The committee recommends support to help address the food insecurity issues. It authorizes the Department of Social Services to enter into a statewide memorandum of understanding with the Chancellor's Office to permit all 114 colleges with eligible facilities to become an authorized supplemental nutrition assistance program, the SNAP program, a retailer, and accept EBT cards, the CalFresh program, at their campus cafeterias and restaurants. So this eliminates the colleges having to apply one by one or waiting for the county to initiate these MOUs, and will then allow all colleges who have students in need and can, if they want to participate in this program, they can participate in it without having to initiate a separate MOU. Senate Bill 291, under Senator Leyva, addresses student financial aid. The committee does recommend support to increase the student financial aid. The bill would establish the California Community College Student Financial Aid Program, which would provide need-based grant awards to eligible community college students who attend an eligible California community college. Subject to an appropriation by the legislature, the bill specifies that the program shall be administered by the Board of Governors of the California Community Colleges and implemented by the eligible California Community College. The bill seeks to include $250 million in fiscal year 2019-20 and incrementally increase that amount by $250 million per year until the program reaches $1.5 billion in fiscal years 2024-25. So this expands the amount of financial aid, and we have long talked about how, although community colleges don't have the same tuition rates that four-year universities might have, our students receive less money than other students. They have less access to financial aid, which then really puts them in a worse position in being able to afford college. Senate Bill 568 by Senator Portantino from our Pasadena area. This bill is on college-focused rapid rehousing program. The committee recommends support to help address the housing insecurity. This bill would establish the college-focused rapid rehousing program, which would provide housing options for homeless students and would provide services to support homeless students in transitioning to stable housing and remaining enrolled in college, contingent upon the enactment of an appropriation of state funds for this purpose, to be implemented by the public segments of higher education if they choose to participate in the program. So this bill does not require that any of the colleges participate, but if the bill passes, and if colleges want to participate in this program, they would be eligible for funds, but they would also have reporting requirements. But it allows them, if we have students who are in need of housing, it allows them to get access to that, to funding for that. So those were the bills that were discussed at the Legislative Committee.
Any questions to Ms. Hua? Thank you very much. The Policy Committee also met, and they, Mr. Osterling and myself, Mr. Hilsman was absent, with Ms. Colross and the president of the college, and we dealt with updating policy changes dealing with board elections, quorum and voting, board policies and administrative procedures, communications among board members, non-discrimination, prohibition of harassment, academic renewal, and athletics. And we'll be voting on those this evening with a recommendation from that committee. Is there any more committee reports?
Yeah, there's budget and audit.
John?
So budget and audit met, and basically the bad news is the change to our funding for this year. If you follow the state formula, it should be a reduction of about $7.4 million, which is very significant. The good news is, I guess, that our staff in fiscal services didn't believe that the state was really going to fund the full funding formula, and when we built the budget, we built it with significantly less funds than the state had said that they were going to give. So the cut to our budget, even though the cut to the appropriation is 7.4, the cut to our budget is 2.3 million. So kudos to those who are ever so cautious and vigilant. But still, 2.3 million is 2.3 million, and it's something we need to deal with. And that was the most important takeaway from the meeting. I will comment that we were, I thought it was very nice that we had a couple of members of the Faculty Association executive team in the meeting with us and part of the meeting, and that I thought was a nice way that we all got to hear the same information at the same time. A few other quick comments. Our internal auditor was also present. We had discussions about procurement cards for purchasing gas and things like that. and some of the internal controls that she has in place for that. We had a discussion on cash receipt controls and also a discussion on fictitious employees. In both of these, we were given some examples of the procedures that we're doing now to try to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of any fraudulent activities. And committee members had a chance to share some of their concerns on some of these areas based on past experiences. And so some of these are ongoing topics that we're kind of highlighting. So again, procurement cards, cash receipts, and fictitious employees. And then finally, our superintendent, I think, did a very nice job, and she kind of had mentioned this to us in passing at the retreat, in explaining to us that we had borrowed from some, as you know, summer intercession FTES can go in either fiscal year. And I guess unbeknownst to me, and maybe to some of the rest of the board, if not all the board, we had in previous years been borrowing from our future summer period to fund not only our base, but growth in a prior period. And we were about 965 FTES. I don't want to say in the whole, but 965 that we had borrowed from one to the other. And the committees, I believe, and correct me, members Berlinda and Jim, but supported the superintendent's idea that we really don't want to be in a borrowing position, even if it's with ourselves from the future. We'd rather have our future be our future. And that we obviously need to fund base, but after that, we need to make sure we're laying away appropriate FTES for the future.
And I
So-
got to do math on the whiteboard, which was really fun.
I'm saying that
I
again?
got to do math on the whiteboard, which
Yes, okay, so there you go. So I think that's the summary of that.
Thank
of
you.
our
Are there any
meeting.
questions for Mr. Martin? Thank you, Mr. Martin. I think that does it for committee reports. Our next item of business deals with the consent calendar, and the first segment of that consent calendar deals with student items, the wishes of the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The second group of items deal with instruction. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Ms. Waugh. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The third items in the consent calendars deals with business and the wishes of the trustees.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Ms. Waugh. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next consent items deal with personnel items, and before we get to that, I just want to mention some people who are retiring. Do you have the names in front of you?
So President
hard.
Fellow, may I make a comment about
Sure.
the consent? So I just wanted to give my appreciation to the President's office and to the staff for providing information about the eCure presentation that's going to happen. So as I read through it, I just thought this was such a fantastic opportunity for our students to be able, and our faculty to present. So thank you. I think it was
Thank you.
Something very
I always like to point out people who are retiring from PCC as part of the PCC family. And the first is Kieko Fukasawa, Associate Professor of Visual Arts and Media Studies, who is retiring after 15 years. And the other is Kirsta Guggen, who's been at PCC, a librarian for 20 years. And we wish them well in their retirement.
absolutely.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items dealing with personnel.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next group of items are action items, and the first action item is nomination for California Community College Trustee Board.
Okay, so as the, okay, for me. Okay, since I didn't get recognized. Okay, so as the CCCT representative for the board, I thought what I would do is give you a process and then make some recommendations to you. So there are 7 positions open. Two were from trustees who have been termed out, and that is Trustee Jaffe from Santa Monica, Trustee Hart from Imperial Valley, and then two who chose not to run again, and that is Trustee Keith from Citrus College and Trustee Figueroa from Riverside. So we have 3 incumbents who are running, of which I am also one. So it's not totally self-serving. I'm giving you some options here. So it leaves us with a total of 7 positions. So I know one of the things, so the process is the board will have a chance to either, you have up to 7 votes. You can vote maximum 7. You can vote fewer than 7. You can, so 7 trustees. So one of the things the board has asked me in the past is what is the composition of the 21 board member? And I've tried to look at, I talked about the balance of the Southern California versus the Northern California, the number of males, females, the ethnic makeup. And it's pretty much stayed the same. So you can see from the 4 trustees who are not running, we're losing 3 females, I guess. So one of the comments I wanted to make is, one of the things I've always recommended to you is that I recommended trustees who have made some effort to go out to reach out to you. You know, it's kind of like when we do our own campaigns. I think it's always helpful when someone actually knocks on your door and says they want your vote, as opposed to just hoping that you'll read their flyer and like them. So I think you should put a little effort into it. So I always give a little nod to that. So I do want to say that I do think the incumbents have done well, and I'm talking about Trustee Brown as well as Trustee Biggins from the Redwoods area. So they have both.
How about the other incumbent?
Okay, I'm going to let you judge that for yourself.
I'm not sure
I didn't
about
want to
her.
be too self-serving, so give me a little leeway on this. So I hope you agree that the 21 board that have been there so far have served you well. We've been advocating. People have asked me, are you using our community college funds? Why are you going out and doing this? And I hope that one of the things you'll agree is having a voice from our college on the board helps us. I try to advocate for not only what Pasadena needs, but also what colleges in our area need. As you know, I was one of the co-founders with Mike Ng of the API caucus, and I convened the joint caucuses of the African Americans, the Latinos, and the veterans, so I try to advocate for diversity. So those are perspectives, and it's allowed me to hear things and be able to bring it back to you so that we can consider it. Among those was the Sarafian building, so I think I was at the table when I first heard that we were having problems, and that allowed the college to react. So it does come to the old adage: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So hopefully, we agree that we want to be at the table.
Wow.
Dog up there.
It is. Well, and I think you've seen that. It's kind of interesting. So back in the days when Trustee Mann was on the league, we didn't have a lot of activity and a lot of people applying, but now you see that people want to be at the table. They want to apply. So we're getting far more applicants than we've had. We're getting a diversity of applicants. So I think that's a good thing for us. And so one of the things I wanted to say to you is I do think that a balance of north, south, small, large college, ethnicity, gender are important. But as you know, I'm also the proposed president. So I'm the current president-elect for the CCCT. And so one of the things I have looked at over the last years is the leadership qualities of the trustees. And so what I propose to you is that we vote based on trustees who have demonstrated strong leadership, and I think that is what we need at the table. So I do have some names I would like to propose to you. I would like to propose all incumbents. So Trustee Brown of El Camino Community College, Trustee Biggins from the Redwoods. So some of the new trustees, I think, have demonstrated that they've been active, they've been engaged, they've been good voices in their capacity. One is Trustee Evelsizer from Palomar Community College. He has participated on the programming committee, and he has also been a Latino caucus leader. I would also like to propose Trustee T.J. Prendergast from the South Orange County Community College. He has served 3 years, I think almost straight, as the president of the board, which shows that his board has great trust in him as a leader. He's a K-12 educator as well. And his own current chancellor, who was from LACCD, has been a very strong voice at the league, and she has given some very high recommendations for him. I would also like to recommend Trustee Tracy Vacker from the Riverside Community College. She would replace her colleague, Trustee Figueroa. Trustee Vacker has been very vocal, both at the Latino caucus. She's been a strong diversity advocate. But she has attended the league meetings, even though she is not on the CCCT, to advocate for issues that are happening in the Inland Empire. And so when we look at things like workforce, the Inland Empire is one of the largest regions, along with LA County and Orange County, in having the most number of jobs and being the most affected with CTE programs. In the Northern California, I'm recommending two. I've already talked about Trustee Biggins from the College of the Redwoods. The other trustee I would like to recommend is Trustee Bridget Davila from San Francisco City College. She is a university professor. She is one of the members on the ACCT Pacific Region Communications Committee with me. So I cover Southern California. She covers Northern California. She is their current board chair, and she has shown strong leadership in her position. So what I propose to you as trustees is you can make a motion to accept my recommendations. You can make your own recommendations. There were other trustees that were also on the list, but these are the ones I feel have demonstrated the strongest leadership.
Thank you, Ms. Wah. The wishes of the trustees.
So I would move that we accept the recommendation of Trustee Watt. She's been working with these folks, so I would think if anyone would know them, she would. So I'll move that we accept her recommendation.
I would second that motion and add that we appreciate your service on the CCCT board, and I think we benefit a lot from that here at PCC. And I'm familiar with the three incumbents and agree with your choice there, and defer to you on the who else to put on the slate.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the nominees are Mr. Pendergast, Mr. Brown, Ms. Biggins, Mr. Elvisar, Ms. Thacker, Ms. Wah, and Ms. Davila.
I have a question.
Mr. Martin?
Question, comment. So sometimes in the past, under certain circumstances, especially when we've had one of our own, we consider the concept of bullet voting, where maybe we vote for one and it's our own. And so I'm kind of asking your fair assessment. I'm guessing, being in the position that you're in, we don't need to do that. You're probably going to have enough wherewithal across the state. I mean, you're president-elect. I think you're going to, my sense is that we don't, I'll just say it this way, we don't need to stoop that low, is my sense. But, I mean, I want to be careful here, because I think it is, like you say, I certainly don't want to be on the table. So, I just think maybe a brief discussion about the idea of a bullet vote, or what you think.
So, Trustee Martin, I really appreciate that, and I know the board has in the past bullet voted for me, bullet voted for Trustee Mann when she ran for the league. I never like to count my chickens before they hatch, so I don't want to make any assumptions. I have been very fortunate as an incumbent to have received a number of calls from other community colleges who have already taken their vote and have notified me that they have voted for me, and I really appreciate those votes of confidence. This is a really interesting election in that I had a number of colleges who were really engaged in this process. I had a board chair from one of the districts who called every candidate and asked them a series of questions. And then I had another one who posed one question to all of the trustees. So I think this is a very, it's an interesting process, and it's one that our own board may want to consider doing some things differently as we look at other trustees. This would be my last term. You can only run for 3 terms. So I will have, I think, three more years, but if I make it, if I am reelected, then I would be the president, so that I think puts us in a good position. I also hope Dr. Androgenis will join me on the league. I wish we could have done it more concurrently. I think that would make it really strong.
Well, if President Rajan Veridian had voted for me when I ran against Bill Scroggins last year, I would be on the CEO board, but he did not vote for me, even though I tried to get him to vote for me.
I think that we as trustees will certainly, I think I am joined by my colleagues in saying we would support you if you ran. And I do tell you that I think it was really helpful that some of you may have seen some of my pieces. I probably sent out, well, I think Trustee Brown and I sent out the most number of pieces, but I was really happy to have endorsements, and people, including our own president, who publicly endorsed me in leadership. So the short answer is Trustee Martin. I think if I am the incoming president of the league, I think I would benefit by having really strong leadership at the table, and I think the slate of names I submitted to you will help.
Thank you, Madam President.
I wanted to echo a couple of things. The first is that CEOs in other districts did tell me, we had a regional consortium meeting last week, and we were talking a little bit about the trustee elections, and some CEOs did tell me that the discussion of bullet voting did come up in their own districts, and there was no bullet voting that happened, and the CEOs in those cases were able to say, let me explain all the reasons why that's not a great idea. So I think you're not alone in not wanting to do it, although I think the inclination, wanting to kind of assure it is genuine. I think it's better if we take this kind of approach that supports everybody. And then the second thing I wanted to add is that, I was recently elected as the vice chair of the CCC2A board, the Athletic Association board. And because of changes in how the CEO board works, when I am the chair of that in a year, the chair attends the board meetings, the CEO board meetings. So I will have an opportunity to weigh in until I can get Bill Scroggins out of my way.
All right. Hey, Bill, she's coming for you.
Yes, I am.
Mr. Osterling.
Just one final comment. Trustee Waugh, speaking on behalf of myself and probably the rest of the trustees, I appreciate your service. Trustee Martin, if we took your suggestion, the only problem with it is that it would probably be piling on. She's probably going to get a unanimous vote from all the districts because she's been so active and prominent. Yeah.
That'd be my sense, yeah. And I felt that way, but I felt like I had to bring it up for discussion because I want to make sure, and I feel more comfortable letting a few others get our votes now.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Waugh and Mr. Martin. And we have a motion on the floor. Further discussion?
I'm going to remember
All in
that
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we wish you great luck, Ms. Waugh.
Thank you.
The next 4 items are resolutions, and Ms. Waugh gave us descriptions of each of these in her report this evening. The first is adoption of resolution number 602 in support of AB 30, Career Assessment Pathways Partnerships. The wishes of the trustees.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The second is the adoption of resolution number 603 in support of SB 291 Student Financial Aid Program.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next is the adoption of resolution 604 in support of AB 612, CalFresh Restaurant Meals Program.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Adoption of resolution number 605 in support of SB 568, college-focused rapid rehousing program.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Osterling, and a motion from Mr. Osterling, a second from Ms. Chin Lau. Ms. Brown?
So this is the, are we talk, 605, right? And this is the one with the rapid rehousing program, which has to do with Portantino's bill, am I correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So I do have concerns on this one. I appreciate what the senator is doing, that he recognizes the fact that we're having some problems, big problems with housing for our students, and I share that with him. I do have some concerns, however, because, first of all, I think the college should not engage in this type of housing program. And yes, this is just a resolution. And yes, if this bill passes, the college will have to apply to be part of the program, which the program sort of say they're going to give like one additional staff, if I read it correctly. And let me just share, before I tell you why I don't or not willing to support it. For the past 20 years, I have worked managing properties in Pasadena, and I'm very well acquainted dealing with the homeless population. I understand all what they go through. I have worked and still work with several agencies that provide housing for the housing population, and I'm currently, as a matter of fact, have contracts with people such as Housing Works, which their main thing is to, house the folks, and the Pasadena Housing, and a few others. And that is good for me. But for the college, sometimes contracts with people being homeless or not being homeless. Folks a lot of times just don't follow rules. And what concerns me is the fact that this will be PCC students. And should something go down, no matter who that agency, that PCC has contracted out, it's still going to be, that's a PCC student. And I'm concerned about the liability. I think the senator and our legislators are on the right track wanting to address the issue, and I think they can address the issue, but not making the college have to put themselves into that situation. So that's the reason why I will not be supporting this resolution.
Thank you. Ms. Watt?
So Trustee Brown, I understand your concerns. I just wanted to clarify a few things, and it's in Senator Portantino's fact sheet on this. So it's not that we would actually be placing the student, and it's not mandatory. So if the college chooses to apply for these funds, then they would have to meet certain criteria. Well, one of those criteria is that we would have to show a partnership with a group that does this housing. So there are many homeless shelters. And so what it allows us to do is have that funding for the students. So it's the same as, it's an extension of financial aid that allows them to apply it to housing, but it would be given to an agency that does specialize in this and does not require the college to specialize in these particular services. And then it does require that the whoever it is, it's not just any homeless person. It's one of our students, and it's in recognition that sometimes life gets in the way of the student being able to complete, and that those barriers sometimes are in the form of housing and food. But it is not a requirement, and it does not put us in the position of actually being the landlord or co-signing for those students, but it allows us to apply for funds to help the student in their housing. So I don't know if that clarifies it or helps in any understanding of that.
Thank you. Madam President.
Hot off the presses, I'm going to refer to Dr. Cynthia Olivo, who actually has an update from as recently as today.
Yes, this morning I hosted our second Housing Resource Committee, and nearly 10 community agencies attended, including Friends Indeed, Hathaway Sycamore, we had Emmanuel House, Learning Works, so we had the City of Pasadena at the table, Union Station, and our goal was to create appropriate ways to refer students from PCC to these agencies. And one of the best presentations was from a group in Los Angeles called Students for Students. And it is a nonprofit organization that provides housing to students. And they shared how there's no MOU between colleges and that organization. So it's, as Trustee Waugh described, it's simply creating resources and having community-based organizations work closely with the institution, but not affiliating through any legal documents.
Thank you. Mr. Osterling.
First of all, I appreciate the open dialogue that we can have here in your comments, Trustee Brown, that we need to be careful about what I'll call mission creep. We're an educational institution, not a housing institution. And I think it's good for us to remember that. Having said that, I would suggest to my fellow trustees that we could look at it in the following fashion, that we would support our senator's bill. It's not mandatory. If, when it comes out of the sausage works of legislation in Sacramento and it ends up in a format that we don't want to participate or play in, we could opt out. So I would suggest that we support this, see how it plays out, and then we can decide if we want to participate or not when we know what the actual final outcome is.
Ms. Chin-Lau.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion that we're having on this subject, and certainly it's very complex in discussing housing issues, because we do know that affordable housing we're in a crisis for affordable housing, and it does impact our students. And we have been very focused, as trustees, to look at student success. And food security, housing security, those are, we've seen that as barriers to student success. So this bill by Senator Porcentino, although may not be perfect, and we haven't seen any really perfect bills coming out of Sacramento, right? That it does offer a temporary short-term solution to what it is an imperfect situation. So I do think that it's important for us to think about the whole student experience here at PCC. And while the mission of PCC is education, that education is very broad in terms of how students receive that education. And so I would like to remind, certainly, or my colleagues, that when we talk about mission-driven, that we are talking about the whole student as well as their experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to add, I respect Ms. Brown for what she had to say. I think many of you know that I spent almost 12 years as a councilman, and I have mellowed since those days. But it used to be very aggravating when Sacramento, they pass all this legislation, mandate it to the cities, but they approve, there's no money. Right now I'm working with cities on stormwater, and they've mandated that each city in Los Angeles, San Gabriel Valley, that have something in place to capture the stormwater, but they've given no money. Each of these cities will go bankrupt in the San Gabriel Valley. At this point, there are some bills by Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio that should help, and we hope that goes through. But I used to be very aggravated on the city council. And so we have a motion on the floor, I believe. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One abstention.
One abstention. Thank you very much. Okay. Dual enrollment memorandum of understanding with La Cañada Unified School District. Do you want to say something?
Actually, I'll have Dr. Junie.
So this is the second read of this MOU. It all came to you as an information item at your last board meeting. It is more or less identical, as I said before, to the MOUs that we already have with Pasadena Unified and with Temple City. The difference is that this is with La Cañada Unified School District. Their board approved this at their last meeting, which was a week ago Tuesday. They're very excited about this partnership that we're moving into. And I think so is Trustee Chen Lau. So.
Ms. Chin Lau.
Yes, I am. And I want to thank Terry and Javier's work in getting this MOU done to this point. I recall it's probably maybe 7 months ago that this started, and Terry told me that it will be done by the end of this fiscal year. So I am delighted that his team was able to get this to La Cañada. And I would also like to thank the board of La Cañada for putting this on their meeting agenda and having us there for their informational meeting. And you may recall that La Cañada was not as excited about this maybe several years ago. And I think that the whole temperature of community colleges, the responses to community colleges have changed. And I like to really commend PCC for its leadership in driving that message. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chin Lau.
If I could make one other comment.
Sure.
I would also say, hopefully, you all can approve this anonymously. If you do that, you'll one-up La Cañada because they actually had one abstention because one of their board members is a faculty member of Pasadena City College, so she abstained.
Okay. Thank you. The wishes of the trustees.
I'm not sure that we have a motion on the floor on
I
this yet.
motion that we approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Chin Lau and a second from Ms. Hua. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much. The item number 7 is approval of the student health fee. Need anything?
So I do not have HEDVA here, so I will say that, as you can see in the board packet, we are raising the health fee by $1 up to $21, which is the maximum that we're allowed to charge. And so it goes up to $21 in regular semesters, fall and spring, and then $18 in summer and intersession. And the reason for raising it is to be able to cover the expenses of running the health center and providing the care we need to provide.
Wishes of the trustees?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Osterling, a second from Ms. Hua. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Items number 8 and 9 are public hearings, and the public hearing on item H8 is regarding the Sunshine proposal for negotiations for the Successor agreement for the 2019-2020 academic year, submitted on February 20th, 2019 from the Pasadena City College Faculty Association to the Pasadena Area Community College District. The board will now accept the public comments not to exceed 5 minutes per individual on the initial proposal from the Pasadena City College Faculty Association, initially submitted on February 20th, 2019. At this time, we are in public comment. Seeing no public comments, I will close the hearing. Item number H9 is public hearing regarding the Sunshine proposal for negotiations for the Successor agreement for 2019-2020 academic year, initially submitted on March 20th, 2019 from the Pasadena Area Community College District to the Pasadena City College Faculty Association. The board will now accept public comments not to exceed 5 minutes per individual on the initial proposal from the Pasadena Area Community College District to the Pasadena City College Faculty Association, initially submitted on March 20th, 2019. The public hearing is now open. Seeing no comments, the public hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
May I ask a simple point of order?
Yes.
There's no necessary motion to officially receive these?
Well, there is a motion to adopt the district's initial proposal to the Pasadena.
Okay, but on the ones that we've received, you don't need a motion to receive them?
You've already done it at the initial meeting for the faculty association's proposals to us. So you've already received those. There's no action today. The only action
Okay.
is for our proposal to them.
Because I remember in meetings past, we've had public
H9
hearings
has a-
and motions to receive, but I guess we've already received, so we're just doing the public hearing part. Okay, thank you.
There is a motion with H9.
H9 there is,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, but I
adopt
meant
the
on the
district.
ones that were received. Okay, so we've received them already. We're,
Yeah.
all right.
So
Thank you.
the item H9 will be a motion to adopt the district's initial proposal to the Pasadena City College Faculty Association. I'll entertain that motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, a second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay. Item number 10 is to receive the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the California School Employees Association, Chapter 777, to the Pasadena Area Community College District. We can just vote on these.
Yes, it's just a first read.
It's just the first read on the annual reopener.
I'll just motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Osterling, a second from Ms. Waugh. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 11 is also to receive and file the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the Pasadena Area Community College District to the California School Employees Association, Chapter 777. And I'll entertain a motion.
Move to receive.
Second.
We have a motion to receive and file from Ms. Waugh, second from Ms. Brown. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 12 is to receive the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the Pasadena City College Police Officers Association to the Pasadena Area Community College District. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to receive.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, a second from Mr. Osterling to receive and file. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 13 is to receive the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the Pasadena Area Community College District to the Pasadena City College Police Officers Association. And I'll entertain a motion to receive and file.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in
Motion was
favor?
from Ms. Brown. I'm sorry. Motion
Ms. Brown?
motion from Ms. Brown.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 14 is to receive and file the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the California Federation of Teachers, Local 6525, to the Pasadena Area Community College District. I'll entertain a motion to receive and file.
Move approval.
A motion from Ms. Brown, a second from Ms. Waugh. Further discussion?
Have to always remember that.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 15 is to receive and file the initial sunshine proposal for the 2019-2020 academic year from the Pasadena Area Community College District to the California Federation of Teachers, Local 6525. And I'll entertain a motion to receive and file.
To receive.
Second.
We have a motion from Ms. Waugh, second from Mr. Osterling. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item number 16 today is approval of additions, deletions, and modifications to the credit and non-credit curriculum. Entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
I have a motion from Ms. Brown, a second from myself. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Number 17 are board bylaws and board policies. And again, this deals with,
Oh, yeah, that's right here. I want to do it one by one.
the policy committee did meet and review these and with Ms. Colross and Madam President. And most of these are updates. Many of these updates are recommended by the state, various entities in the state. And they include board elections, which we had to change that because the elections in California have changed. The quorum and voting, dealing with Ed Code 15266, for 2/3 majority vote on all members of the board for a resolution to pursue the authorization and issuance of bonds. Board policies and administrative procedures, these were updated to reflect appropriate title changes in item 5. And communications among board members, this bylaw was updated to reflect the language in Government Code 54952.2 that prohibits board members from using any form of communications to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board outside of the regular meetings. The next board policy was non-discrimination. This board policy was updated to reflect current language in Education Code Title V, Government Code, Penal Code, and accreditation standards. The board policy was vetted through district legal representations for currency and accuracy. The next board policy dealt with prohibition of harassment, and this board policy was updated to reflect current language in Education Code Title V, Government Code, Penal Code, and accreditation standards, and this board policy was vetted through district legal representation for currency and accuracy. The next board policy dealt with academic renewal. This board policy was updated to reflect current language regarding the opportunity for students to seek academic renewal. And finally, the last item dealt with athletics, and this board policy was updated to reflect that the name change to the statewide athletic association for community colleges. Anything else to add or questions?
Are you going to vote this a package or individually?
I think we can do it as a package.
Do it as a package unless there's the will of the
Okay.
board not to do so.
So if I may.
Sure.
I have one slight suggestion to one, which is just, and then I would like a discussion on another one separate. So on, I have one slight recommended addition to 2100, where it just insert a portion of in front of the city of San Gabriel. If we're talking portions for El Monte, we should talk portions for San Gabriel, because San Gabriel's portion is significantly smaller than El Monte's portion. So that was my only comment on 2100. It's pretty
So that's
minor.
number 5 under trustee areas. And so you're not suggesting taking a portion of away from El Monte, but instead
I'm
adding a portion
adding
of.
the word "a portion of" in front of San Gabriel to be more consistent is all I'm asking on 2100. And I'd like a separate discussion on 3410.
Okay.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve the board policies
sorry,
except for 3410. Ms. Chinlau?
I have a question on 2720 on communications among board members. So the original or the previous policy had a majority of board members, which probably is along the lines of the Brown Act, right? So now this new policy says members of the board. So I would just like some clarification. Does that mean, for example, that I cannot talk to Trustee Wah about getting San Marino District to sign an MOU with PCC? I mean, what type of just some clarity as to what is it that we can discuss and can discuss?
Well, what you can talk to a fellow trustee about something that's of interest to you that
Right.
you want to bring to the board for a full vote of the board. But what you can't do is, let's say, do a group text to all of the board members and say, hey, I'm gonna make sure this gets put on the upcoming board agenda, and I hope you all support it.
Right.
Because if you do that, then especially if
Yes.
anybody responds to you, then that becomes what's known as a serial meeting.
Right. So that I understand. In the language, it says members of the board. So that's why it's not clear to me if it's all members of the board that is communicating or a couple members of the board that's communicating. So that's where
Yeah, you could.
the type of
You
clarity.
could construe your conversation with her about San Marino as members of the
Yes,
board communicating
exactly.
the way this is written.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
Ms. Colross?
Ms. Colross, yeah.
Is this is recommended language from CCLC?
The Policy and Procedure Service.
This is recommended, but it's not.
So we subscribe to the CCLC policy service, and what that is they provide us with policy updates that are in accordance with the Ed Code and with Title V. And so this language is what they have given to us as required.
Ms. Wah?
So I had another question about 2100, but, regarding this board bylaw 2720, I think the wording is a little confusing. It is, I think, a little contrary to what I've heard in the past on legal. I'm wondering if we could pull this bylaw and have it looked at by legal and have, and see the wording directly from the league. It just, I think maybe it just deserves a little more discussion.
Sure, this isn't time sensitive, so we absolutely can pull it and have it reviewed.
So I'd like to move that we pull this bylaw for further research and to bring it back to the board for approval.
Second.
That makes no sense.
Well, we don't really need, is that okay with the trustees?
Fine
Pull
with
this?
me. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be done then. Thank you.
President Fellow, I would also like to add something on 2100. So I saw in the board questions, one of the trustees asked about the election date, and I thought it was worthy of some discussion by the trustees on whether or not we want to say that it should be taking the office then should be the first meeting after April 1st. It does seem like there is a little transition time for the trustee who is leaving office to the time the new trustee takes office, and it usually has been the first meeting of the following month. And I think that Dr. Anjajana submitted a couple of alternatives that the board might consider. Am I looking at the right one?
Yes, one of the options was that you could choose to start the newly elected board member's term of office on the first Friday before the next regularly scheduled board meeting in April, or the newly elected board member's term of office would begin on the first Friday in the month succeeding his or her election to office. And if you did the second option, then you would eliminate the need to state April 1st, if that's your concern.
So it wasn't my concern, but I thought
Okay.
I thought whichever trustee submitted that as a concern, I thought it merited some further discussion. So I did like your recommendation on the second alternative, because it then gives the departing trustee a little time to still have their last meeting. And I think it's been an awkward transition in the past. We have everybody sitting at one table, then someone has to get up and move their signs around. So I would just like to offer that for the trustees' consideration, that we consider the second alternative, and that is to have the new trustee, elected trustee, begin their term on the first Friday in the month succeeding his or her election to office.
Is that okay with the trustees, or?
I second that motion. I second the motion for that amendment.
I just want to get us, if we're all for it, we don't need any motions.
I have a question.
Please excuse my math skills, but when you say succeeding so what month would that be?
It would be April, because you are moving your elections to March.
So March. So someone gets elected March 5th, and then they start when?
In April, so they would not start, so their last meeting would be the March meeting,
Okay.
and then they would start in April.
And specifically, it would be the Friday in April that precedes our first April meeting.
And the significance of that date is that that's when the board packet is posted. That's when the board agenda is posted.
So the outgoing trustee will have one more meeting, which is a March meeting.
Would have the March meeting,
meeting.
yes.
Okay.
Good week, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Well, I'm actually the one that floated the
I thought it was
question.
you.
But my concerns were alleviated. So my concerns were, in a state of emergency, and you hadn't really had a regular board meeting yet, and you call a special meeting, Who are you going to call?
Who shows up?
That's where my mind was going more than that. And I was concerned that it seemed like until the trustee had the official meeting, that you would want to stick with the old team because it's some emergency thing that would be better. So I was running more along that kind of a line. And then as I thought about it, I started to think, well, I guess anytime you hold the meeting, I don't know. So I think the answers you came up with solve that, I guess, a little bit.
If I can respond to that,
Yes.
let's say that the person would then take office, that Friday, that first Friday before the next board meeting. So that's when the board packet gets posted. And then the next day, something happens that requires the posting of a special board meeting, which Brown Act requires 24 hours notice. So we could post a meeting 24 hours. The new trustee would then, because that Friday has happened, the new trustee would show up to the special meeting, and that person would be sworn in at that meeting. So that can be taken care of.
Okay,
That
it
what
was
your
just that
concern was?
transition
Yes.
in an emergency that I was trying to think through.
Right.
I didn't want to create an opportunity for, 4 guys got voted out, and so now we're going to call a special meeting and change the college upside down or something.
Yeah.
I didn't want anything like that. I just wanted to make sure in an emergency there was an orderly transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And you could even look at it as if it's March 31st and there's a special meeting need, the trustee who's leaving office is still technically in office and would be the one who came to that special board meeting. The term begins in
So
April.
I kind of came comfortable with all of them.
Okay.
But maybe
Well,
the
then my
extra
work
time.
here is done.
Yeah, but maybe the extra time is good, so.
Okay.
So
But that was what was facilitating my concern.
Everyone here is comfortable with,
With the option, the second option.
okay. Why do I have BP 3410 circled? I don't know why.
I asked for a separate discussion
Okay.
on it.
Okay.
If you want to approve all the rest, but
Okay.
I can, we're kind of picking on them all. I can pick on mine, and maybe you don't want a separate discussion.
Let's do a separate election.
All right.
In case we have to do one. So we are pulling 2720. We have approved 21 changes in 2100. And so I will accept a motion to approve the rest of the policy statements, except for 3410.
And just for clarity, I would move to approve everything except 2720, which we've pulled. We approved 2100 as amended,
Yes.
and all of the rest, except for
And
2720
3410 is being
And 3410.
and 3410.
Separate vote.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll now go back to 3410.
If we could stay on this subject, on 2720, we've pulled it, but I share Trustee Chenlow's concern that in the interest of being all-inclusive on the different types of ways in which we could communicate each other, the language was changed, and I think I would ask and direct that we go back and follow the language that used to be there about a majority of the members, because that is the way the Brown Act works, as I understand it.
Well,
And then
that's,
expand the language about all the different methods of technology.
that's what I'm going to go to legal services for. And I
Yeah.
have somebody to consult with on this, so we'll go to.
Ask them.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will get a legal opinion.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to look at 3410. Mr.
Okay,
Martin.
thank you. And just quickly, I agree totally with what Trustee Osling just said about 2720, and appreciate Trustee Chenlow pointing that out, because I didn't quite catch that when I read it. And as you read it, the way she says it, it reads exactly like she says, and it just gives me great concern the way it's written. My next quick comment is just thanks to the policy committee for wanging them out. Wow. You must have had a lightsaber and you were taking
had,
on stormtroopers
No, we
or
have the
something.
rock
had-
star known as Crystal
Yeah, we had
Kohlroth.
Dr. Kohlroth.
Okay,
That's
well-
how we did it.
Kudos across the board. And so as I dive into my concerns with 3410, I would just want to express my appreciation for all that's done here. So 3410 is in concept talking about non-discrimination, and obviously I have absolutely no problem with the concept of non-discrimination. It lists numerous groups, and if I could do anything, I would list a few more groups that aren't on here. I mean, I believe you don't discriminate against anybody for any reason, period, and you start naming groups and you leave somebody out, but I know the state, it's paralleled on state law that specifically names groups, and that is not my issue here. My concern is in the final paragraph on page 1, for those of you that got it open, and it starts with no district funds shall ever be used. And I have two concerns here. The first concern I have is we are talking about associations, and I think this paragraph is referencing people who are associated with groups that discriminate, and I think this paragraph is also talking about people who may be in the groups mentioned above who are associated with those groups. I think it's referring to both of those at some point in this paragraph, if I'm reading it correctly. But that's my point. It's a hard read. It's hard to differentiate which associations we're referring to where in that paragraph. Where is the association referring to people who might be a member of a group that is discriminating, and where is the association in that paragraph referring to a member who might be in a group that's being discriminated against? Okay. So at best, I would say this is a tough read to try to figure that out. And I would ask, my end game here is that we would, again, similar to 2710, ask this be pulled, give it back to the committee, because I know there's legal, it's based on legal law, which you provided to us as trustees when asked, which I find also confusing. And so just because the state's confusing, I hope we can do better, similar to 2710. So my first point is I think it needs a rewrite no matter where you want to go with it. I wish it could be written a little clearer and ask it be pulled and rewritten. But I do need to make a point on the second point. And the second point is where we are referring to associations with groups that have been known to discriminate. And I have a deep concern here. And I'm very concerned that there is guilt by to incriminate somebody by using guilt by association. First, when we think of groups that discriminate, probably the first group that pops in some people's mind is something like the Ku Klux Klan, and it's really clear, or I don't know if it's really, anything's really clear, but about as clear is that's a discriminatory group, or a group like that, or some hate group on the internet that's doing something like that, and it's really clear. But there may be other groups in the future who could be deemed discriminatory groups that aren't quite as clear. I read a Wall Street Journal article a couple weeks ago about a big discussion in the United Methodist Church, and they took a vote, and you know, you could make a claim, or someone could, reading this, that the United Methodist Church was a discriminatory group. Okay? And so I'm just trying to point out that somebody's deciding who is and who isn't, and though there's several that are just slam dunks, inevitably there could be some that are marginal. And now we are saying that we aren't going to hire or pay money to any member who is associated with the United Methodist Church. So let's follow that logic. Further on in the article, it states that George W. Bush and Hillary Clinton are both members of the United Methodist Church, or at least they were members of the United Methodist. I don't know if they still are, which means if we follow this policy and do guilt by association, we couldn't have Hillary Clinton come and be a commencement speaker because we pay them a $300 stipend or some piddly amount, because they're associated with what may be deemed a discriminatory group. And so you can quickly see the slippery slope that the guilt by association puts us on. You know, the laws of this country are based on a writ of habeas corpus, where if somebody's discriminatory, I don't care what group they're a part of, if they've discriminated, that's a just cause not to hire them. That's a just cause not to pay them. But to associate, because they're a member of a group who somebody has deemed that way, is against the writ of habeas corpus, and it's against what I would say is a fundamental right of this country. And in fact, there could be members of these very groups who are trying to overturn those groups to a different policy that would others seem to be less discriminatory. That was what that whole discussion in the United Methodist Church was all about. So again, I ask this be pulled so that the language can be cleaned up, but I also ask that we try not to have guilt by association with discriminatory groups. Certainly if someone is discriminatory, we don't want to hire them, we don't want to pay money. Any group that's discriminatory, we don't want to pay that group money. But we have to be very, very careful in this country on some fundamental rights when we start doing guilt by association. And that's my concern with this.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Ms. Chin-Lau?
Part of what I'm seeing with these policies are languages written by attorneys. And I think that sometimes when we have legal needs, it doesn't reflect our practical situations that may come up as we manage or as we lead the college. So what I would like to perhaps see or hear from President Androgenis is that maybe when you do ask the legal team to vet this again, to bring some examples of what this would look like. So for example, does this mean that you can never join the California Club because at one point the California Club did not include women in their membership? So those are some of the things that I would like clarity on from legal services as what examples would they can they bring to us that would reflect these policies?
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam President?
So I'm happy to take this for legal consultation. As with all of the other updates, the language came from the policy service of CCLC. I agree that the language is inelegant. I think that it's trying to cover a whole host of things. The expansion of what we're concerned about is large. I think the murkiness of the policy, though, is, to go to your example, the California Club, you're right. At one point, they did not allow women, but they do allow women now. So from a historical perspective, the answer is no, that's not a problem. I think what this policy is probably more designed to get at is, until 2 or 3 years ago, the Boy Scouts of America did not allow any troop leader to be LGBTQ. Now, they've recently revised that policy, but it took a lot of public pressure to do that. So the question is, are we talking about that? Are we talking about, should we have any partnerships with the Salvation Army? Because the Salvation Army does not have an open policy about some things. I think the real question in my mind is whether or not it means that we should not have any food catered by Chick-fil-A, which is across the street, because Chick-fil-A has extremely discriminatory policies when it comes to the LGBTQ community. So that's a question. This may be in the vein of what passed a few years ago with California community colleges and state agencies not being allowed to travel to 8 states across the country that openly do not protect against discrimination. I think this is in the vein of that. But I think I understand what your question is, and I think because the language is maybe inelegant, it's not clear. I see how you're reading this policy. My hunch is it's a little bit more global, and it's not meant to be on an individual level, so it's not designed to do guilt by association. It's more, so going back to George Bush and Hillary Clinton, it's not about whether or not those two individuals should be allowed to come. It's about whether or not the United Methodist Church should be allowed to come here and have an event. So I think those are two different things, but I can see from your perspective, how those two things seem to come together.
Mr.
If I
Martin?
may. So I'm going to agree with what you just said, and I'm going to make the point this way. So someone is deciding whether Salvation Army, Boy Scouts of America, and Chick-fil-A are discriminatory, and they'll find them discriminatory, they find them won't, whoever that is or whatever that comes out, that's not my issue. It's probably interesting to think about who does make that decision, but that's not my issue. My issue is that some PCC student that used to work at Chick-fil-A wants to be a student TA here, and we won't hire them because they work for Chick-fil-A if you follow this policy. My issue is that somebody was an Eagle Scout and now has gone through college, and we're not going to hire them because you're associated with the Boy Scouts of America. Or somebody played in the band, the Salvation Army band, or rang a bell next to Albertsons for Christmas to raise money for the Salvation Army. So this college flat out will not hire them because they are associated with that organization. And I find that tremendously wrong. I find that guilt by association. I think that's against all fundamental American principle. And if that person discriminated, absolutely we should not hire that person. But because they rang a bell, because they flipped a chicken, or because they made Eagle Scout is not cause to say they're a discriminatory person and we will not hire them.
For the
And
point
I
of
think that part has to be removed. That's not saying somebody someplace can't say Ku Klux Klan or Chick-fil-A or somebody else is or isn't, because they will, and that's fine.
I want to clarify, the Boy
Yeah.
Scouts of America did change their policy,
no,
so I
you
want to
said
make
that.
sure you
No,
know.
no,
I
you
want to be
said
very
that.
clear. They did
Had they
change their
not.
policy.
Had they not changed their policy,
I don't have to
we couldn't have
resign
any
as
Eagle Scouts,
trustee.
you know?
You do not have to resign as trustee. Please stay, Trustee Osterling.
Yeah, so that's my point.
Well, they did admit to abusing 12,000 kids. So there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that's a different issue.
I'm trying to make my point.
Yes.
It's not I'm not raising a question about Chick-fil-A having a meeting here. That gets worked out if they are or aren't discriminatory. I'm raising a point about the PCC student who got a part-time job working there and now can't
Or should they
come
get a
over here and get
scholarship?
hired.
Yeah, should they get a scholarship?
You can't
because
get a
they work-
scholarship because they worked at Chick-fil-A.
But I think that also goes to, where do we draw that line, right? Because somebody could have been a member of the KKK and we wouldn't be hiring that person. Well, I hope not. But then, who gets to decide what organizations fit that list?
California's the attorney.
Right? So, I mean, sure, the law, but,
over here.
sure. So that's what I'm saying. It's like Chick-fil-A, KK. I mean, we're going down this slope.
It's a problem to
Bob, why
have
don't
those
you,
all together. Yeah, why don't we have our expert in the room talk about this?
So there are non-discriminatory laws on the books that speak to this topic very clearly. So association, because of employment, for example, working at Chick-fil-A, would not preclude you from being employed because we could never discriminate against you for the reason of what the organization stands for example, in an employment decision. So I think from an employment perspective, everyone's pretty much protected on their merits of what they bring to the table and not who they worked for or what religious affiliation they may have or whether they were a Boy Scout. We have plenty of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, people who work at Chick-fil-A. I mean, so that is protected under the law. I think this is more towards membership to a group that's been defined primarily by the Chancellor's Office as well. That's where we take a lot of our information from to check and see if particular groups are discriminatory or are known to be discriminatory or have those practices. So in instances that this is talking to, it sometimes wouldn't even be the board. We would call the Chancellor's Office and say, is this a known group of which has these practices that we would not hire them to come in and do something on campus outside of the employment perspective.
And that is not my issue.
Right.
My issue is if somebody was a member of whatever group that is, maybe they changed their ways. I think they get evaluated as a person for what they've done in the employment situation. They go through the process. I could see why people here may not hire them,
But we wouldn't hire them, but that's not a qualification for the job in which we are looking at them for. So we have to hire people based on what they bring to the table from their experience, not from any of their affiliations according to the law.
Okay.
So can you do the job? Do you have the skills to do the job? I don't care where you come from, who you are.
I like what you're saying. I don't like what this is saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
And that's the problem.
Mr. Osterlin?
Because I'm voting on this, not you.
I concur with Trustee Martin. What you described is and should be our employment practices, but if you read this literally, and you have to read policies literally, in particular, if we just look at the last half sentence of the last paragraph, starting with the words, or based on his/her association with a person or group with one or more of these actual or perceived characteristics. So I think, speaking for myself and maybe for Trustee Martin both, we support the idea of not having involvement with these groups, but we suggest that the language at the very end is the slippery slope where we can't associate with people associated with
And
these
I appreciate
groups.
what you're saying,
Yeah.
in all honesty. And that's why, again, the first thing I brought up is this is really confusing because you're confusing the associations. Because I think my fellow trustee, the way I read it, just confused the associations. I think the last two sentences are there to protect people who are members of the groups and say you can't discriminate against that person because he's a member of the military and religion and sex and all the things up there.
So I'm going to cap this off by saying that I've just heard that we actually sent these to a legal team to review. So I pledge to you, I'm sending them to a different legal team to review. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and so
Thank
I would
you.
ask it to be pulled. I would move that we
Thank
pull
you.
this one, send it back to committee.
Second.
Is it the consensus of the board to pull this? Fine, we will pull that. It's now time for the superintendent president's report.
Moving right along. Okay, so thank you very much. Always an interesting, lively discussion. So I have made it through 3 months. Yay! It's awesome. I just want to say thank you publicly to Trustee Wah for 2 lovely receptions, one in San Marino the other night and one in South Pasadena. And I did tell the folks in San Marino that I mentioned to my family that I was going to this reception on Monday, and my partner Martha said, "Do you ever get tired of being received places?" I said, "No, it really doesn't get old." It was a wonderful reception. So thank you very much for coordinating them. They're great. So there's always a lot to brag about at Pasadena City College. The first is that we have a fine arts professor, Mary Rose Mendoza, who was named a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship. And she was named for her, quote, exceptional capacity for productive scholarship or exceptional creative ability in the arts. She was the only recipient out of 175 educators who comes from a community college. And interestingly enough, she's the 4th Guggenheim recipient, and she shares an office with our only other living previous winner, Rebecca Morris. So
Can I just mention something? Because I just got the list today. This is a big deal.
it's huge.
Now, the people who are getting this today, it was the professor at Harvard of English and Environmental Studies and Visual Studies, who's written like 20 books and has a number of positions. But this is a big deal,
Yeah,
especially
it's
for a
huge.
community college.
Yes, it's just amazing. I am so excited as a former speech and debate folk myself, and my daughter's a current one, that our debate team absolutely rocked the national championships. We actually won the national title for the middle school division. The national championships are determined in small school, medium school, and large school, and that's not based on the size of your institution, it's based on the size of your team. So we took a medium-sized team and we won the national title, which was the first time in at least 3 decades that we've won the national title. For the first time ever, the college won the Mariner Award, which is also known as the Perpetual Sweepstakes Award. And what that does is it recognizes the cumulative performance earned by the college over all time. So it's the total number of points that they've amassed. So it's an amazing honor for the students and the coaches. And actually, they will be coming to the May board meeting, so you can have an opportunity to say congratulations. I mean, it's truly amazing. Several gold medals in terms of national championship in impromptu speaking, and again, we'll have a whole list, but this is an amazing honor for this college. As many of you know, Dr. Levo and I traveled to Washington to be officially recognized as Aspen Finalists, and as you know, we made it in the top 10, and we're focused on 2021. And as I promised, as soon as we get the feedback, the official report from the Aspen folks, I will be sharing that widely because I think everybody should see where it is we're awesome, because the report will talk about that, and it will also talk about what we need to do going forward. I was able to take a tour of our facility at PCC Northwest, and it is really exciting to see where we're going to have a great culinary kitchen, and Dr. Bell over there has some great ideas. We already got some things in the mix, and I think either this Friday or next Friday I'm going to be interviewing culinary finalists for the faculty position. So we are off and running, and that's going to be a great program for the community, and both from a credit and a non-credit standpoint. And our new Robert G. Freeman Center for Career and Completion will be opening to students next week. You may all have gotten an invitation to the official ribbon cutting, and that's on May 16th. But what it does is it moves our career center out of the L building and offers new and expanded services in front of the IT building. So this is really exciting for our students. And from an athletics perspective, we're also doing well. Our PCC Lancer softball team reached the 25-win mark for the 3rd straight year in a row. And we've had the most successful regular season in 13 years with a 26-14 record, and qualified for the playoffs in the 3rd straight year. And that's 5 consecutive 20-win seasons in just 6 years of coaching for our coach, Monica Tatlinger. So that's pretty awesome. And then our baseball team is bound for the playoffs again. They won their last home season game yesterday against Cerritos, and we'll be going to the playoffs again. So we're rocking it on all fronts. So that concludes my report.
Good, thank you. Now we'll turn to shared governance. Ms. Lenore Rogas, Academic Senate.
Thank you. Over the last month, the Senate has been busy and the faculty have been busy, of course, hiring many, many, many new faculty along with the deans and the vice presidents. So there's been a lot of movement on that front. The Senate approved the Vision for Success goals at our last meeting that you all had the presentation for from Chris Akalros at our last meeting. And so those are making their way through the shared governance process. Our Curriculum and Instruction Committee has been very busy. In particular, I'd like to thank Sharice Amirian, who is our articulation officer, for composing the Associate Degree for Transfer Reciprocity Guidelines. This will enable students who begin a transfer degree at another community college to complete that transfer degree here at PCC using coursework that they had started elsewhere. And so that should help enable higher completion rates and for the ADT, and of course transfer rates as well. And the Academic Senate is in the middle of the approval process for those guidelines. We also approved the Flexible Flex guidelines. This will enable faculty, both full-time faculty and adjunct faculty, to complete their flex obligations, which is a professional development obligation for which we receive money from the Chancellor's office. to have various different ways to complete that obligation, not necessarily coming to campus with prearranged professional development opportunities, but a wide array of professional development opportunities that may be better suited to individual faculty members' needs. And so we are looking forward to faculty increasing the amount of flex participation through a more flexible way to complete that requirement. And then lastly, I'd like to, well, not quite lastly, today I'd like to thank Dr. Jonas for a lovely reception for our newly tenured faculty. This is one of the first times that I can recall that the institution has honored the tenured faculty in this way, and it was really exciting for those faculty to feel that moment mattered. And so
Definitely, it was great.
Yeah, they were very thankful for it. And then lastly, I'd like to give a quick note of thanks to our retiring faculty that were discussed earlier today, Keiko Fukuzawa, who is a highly regarded ceramics instructor, and Krista Gogan from library, who's not only an outstanding library faculty member, but a huge asset to this campus in many ways that I couldn't possibly list here. She's very active in shared governance, extremely active in our distance education committee, and enormously knowledgeable and helpful on the accreditation standing committee. And so her contributions are huge and will be sorely missed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tito Altamirano, management.
Yes, sir. So actually, I have a lot of stuff, so I'm going to read it. But actually, I'm going to change my order. I actually want to also highlight Krista Gogan. I've been working with her for about 9 years now on the Institutional Effectiveness Committee, and she has been instrumental in that. So we'll definitely miss her, as well as her participation every year in Welcome Day, which is something that our students really thrive and enjoy. But now to on what I actually have written. Congrats to Donald Lowe, who's actually our new Director of Small Business Development Center. He was just approved. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm sure he'll be happy. And also thanks to our deans and other managers who have been diligently serving on hiring committees to ensure that the best staff, faculty, and managers are hired to serve our students and join in our mission as an equity-minded learning community. I'd like to recognize Tamika Alexander. Oh, she's still here. Yay. Hi, Tamika. Tamika, who has been vital in helping students, along with her staff, to help students appeal their denials into respective colleges, universities. They have had some successes in this intervention. I really appreciate her work on this. It's important for our students. Dean Rebecca Cobb messaged the staff yesterday, and I actually wanted to read her statement, which is why I said I'm actually going to read it, as it demonstrates the commitment of our Office of Student Life and the college, how it has towards supporting our female students and educating all of us. And it reads as follows. For the past 20 years, Peace Over Violence has run its Denim Day campaign on a Wednesday in April in honor of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. The campaign began after a ruling by Italian Supreme Court where a rape conviction was overturned because the justices felt that since the victim was wearing tight jeans, she must have helped the person who raped her remove her jeans, thereby implying consent. The following day, the women in the Italian parliament came to work wearing jeans in solidarity with the victim. Peace Over Violence developed the Denim Day campaign in response to this case and the activism surrounding it. Since then, wearing jeans on Denim Day has become a symbol of protest against erroneous and destructive attitudes about sexual harassment, abuse, assault, and rape. In this sexual violence prevention and education campaign, we ask community members, elected officials, businesses, and students to make a social statement with their fashion statement by wearing jeans on this day as a visible means of protest against the misconceptions that surround sexual violence. So that is why today, yes, at a board meeting, I am wearing jeans. And lastly, the Management Association has its next business meeting on May 3rd, where we will be discussing the policies, procedures, committees, and also the vision for success goals, and lastly, our items for our next MOU. That is all for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mitchell, classified.
Hi, good evening. I apologize if any of my report is a little redundant. I was asked to be here last minute. So anyhow, the Classified Senate is currently undergoing their elections for the 1920 term. So we are currently receiving self-nominations from any classified professionals that are interested to serve on the Classified Senate. In addition, we will be holding our Classified Day on May 17th at the Huntington Library. we plan to continue the theme of guided pathways and also the vision for success so that we can make sure that all classified here on campus understand what it is and why it's important to serving our students and also our work here at PCC. And following that, the week after Classified Day, we will have Classified Appreciation Week. So that right now is to be determined, but we're hoping to collaborate with the Management Association and others to just have a presence here on campus. And finally, we're doing our spring fundraiser, which is a cookbook. Originally, we were going to do this with just classified, right? But we decided that we wanted to incorporate everyone. So we did send out a campus-wide email asking faculty, staff, managers to submit their recipes, and we still need some. And I will close by saying I hope that we can get a recipe from Madam President.
I have one ready to come to you, actually.
Please.
I do.
After having eaten that cupcake today, I'm like, we may need that recipe unless it's a secret.
I can give you that recipe.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you that recipe.
Thank you. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim, Associated Student.
Hello, good evening. So our associated students have done the two events. The first event is the Earth Day picnic. It is the time to learn about the sustainability, also to learn about the eco-friendly. And our second event is about the Armenian genocide event. So it is commemorate the anniversary of genocide, and the main purpose is to let students know what happened like a few decades ago, or many years ago. And so we give out the traditional foods, and we also taught our students about the Armenian traditional dances. And that's the two events that we did. And I'd like to thank Dr. Michaela sharing the background information about the new equity plan from the Student Success Committee. And also I would like to thank Crystal Colros for sharing the vision for success local goals. So we had a very interesting discussion and question about it. So we are planning to have votes in our next general meeting. That's all my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Chin Lau.
I have no reports at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Brown.
So I actually did attend I guess it was the Armenian Genocide Commemoration Celebration a couple weeks ago, which was really well attended. They have really come a long way. That park was pretty much packed with officials, and so they felt good about it. It was a great opportunity. So also what I would like to request, I was happy to hear your report, Dr. Andrew Nohas. And what I would like to maybe see if sometime in the near future you could give the board, arrange for the board to have a tour at the Northwest Center. We have no idea of what that place looks like. And excited about all that we hear, but I think it would be good for the board to be able to have a meeting or something over there in the near future. So I would like to put that on the agenda.
Okay, so noted. Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Osterling.
Thank you. This upcoming month, the month of May, is Foster Youth Month, and in recognition of that, LACSTA, the Los Angeles County School Trustees Association, is going to have our very own PCC Dr. Nikki Dixon speak on that topic at our May meeting, and that was arranged courtesy of Dr. Olivo. Thank you for doing that. And as a reminder, I'm our representative from PCC to LACSTA, but all trustees are always invited to every meeting.
We are.
Yes, and you're a regular attendee there, Ms. Brown. I wanted to thank Tito for the backstory on International Denim Day, and wanted to let everybody here know that I'm also in support of International Denim Day.
There you go.
I'm sporting that haute couture brand, Kirkland. But I'm also outfitted with some swag provided by Dr. Olivo, the Denim Day button. I noticed she kept the big one for herself, but thank you for that swag. But on a more serious note on this subject, we need to remind ourselves that people in positions of authority cannot and should not take advantage of those that aren't in that same position of strength, and further that we not stigmatize the victims of this, but recognize their rights. So without further ado, that's the end of my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you for showing us your dad jeans.
Well, I was going to point out, because I'm the only one they got to see him here, right? And so I was going to point out Trustee Osterling is styling it. I just thought he was being hip, but
Me too.
anyway. Yeah, I have two important announcements. First, PTSA fundraiser at El Portal, April 30th. You may have got that notice. I'm just reminding you. And for me, any excuse I can get to eat Mexican food is a win. So I put it immediately on my calendar. And second, I really only use my PCC laptop here at PCC, and I've lost my mouse. So I'm just putting the call out there before I have to shell out $30 to buy the college a new one to give me a new one. No, I don't want to borrow one. I want to find the one that I may have left here last meeting or something. So if somebody in their bag has two of those creatures running around,
Mice?
two mice running around in their bag, because maybe, we all have them up here and they all look the same. So if you'll check your bag, but I'm missing my mouse. So that's my other last important announcement. I think I left it here.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Ms. Watt.
Well, I wanted to report that I had attended the Loyola Marymount Center for Public Policy meeting where they talked about their newest survey, which was the LA forecast, and that surveys various public opinion throughout the LA County area on the quality of life, how people see, how well are they doing in the workforce, how well are they doing in housing. So I encourage you all to read it. This is the same group that came to the community colleges in LA County and interviewed us, and I think that survey will be coming out soon, but very interesting results. And I also wanted to shout out to South Pasadena, my South Pasadena and San Marino communities, to Joe and Ellen Daigle of South Pasadena, and then Ken and Winifred Veranda of the Southwestern Academy for hosting the receptions for Dr. Indrajana. So she was very well received, made a great impression on everyone. And we had quite a lot of local media coverage on those, and they have both communities have, the media outlets from those communities have said that they would really like to partner with us and help us get more information out about PCC, and I think that's something that's a great opportunity for us. So thank you for attending that. And then just to remind everybody that the League Conference is next week in Squaw Valley. I hope you will all try to come. I know it's a little of a trek, but there's some really interesting things coming up in the conference. So they'll have a new trustee track. So it's supposed to be a new program. I'm interested to see how it's received, but some workshops on diversity and inclusion. We will have a plenary session from the ACCT on this, and we'll also have some workshops on the reformation of financial aid for student-centeredness and the affordability task force work. So I think a lot of really great information, so I hope you all come.
Thank you, Ms. Waugh. It was a pleasure to be at the 10-year reception today, and I think we have to celebrate these things.
Absolutely.
10 years is a big thing. It means you have a job for life if you don't screw up somewhere. But and speaking of celebrations, I would like to put forward to the campus community. I've talked a lot to various people, Bobby Abrams and what have you. I believe in celebrations, and we have a new president, and I believe we should be doing a convocation. Academic Senate people. It's something that you do when you have a new president, and you invite members of the community and presidents of other colleges. And I've talked to Ms. Abrams about perhaps a fundraiser for the this foundation a dinner at the Huntington or something where we can bring in some money for scholarships and what have you. But I would like the campus community to start thinking about it. It should be done within the next 6 months or so.
I would think so. I think Bobby and I talked maybe about something in August as we're going into fall. So maybe a welcome back, and also it would be a great way to celebrate the end of the fundraising campaign since it's winding down, and it would be a multi-part celebration. So I think that would be great.
Thank you, and you deserve it.
Well, thank you.
Doing a great job. Proposed future agenda items. Any?
I just want to let the trustees know that on the May 15th agenda, a reminder that will be our meeting with a joint meeting with our student government, so that's very exciting. But also, we will be presenting our local Vision for Success goals for your approval. You've heard, you had a study session on them on most of the goals, except for the one equity goal. You did not have a study session on that because the data was still up in the air, and but as much as it's possible for the data to be grounded, at least today at 8:50 in the evening, we have our local goal based on, so we're going to be presenting those goals to you. They need to be approved and submitted to the Chancellor's office by May 31st, so that will definitely be on the agenda. And then at our June meeting, you will be presented with the equity plan, which is also due to the Chancellor's office on June 30th. And I just want to put a little note in the back of your mind that it may sound like we're doing two separate things, Vision for Success goals that include equity in 1 month, and then the equity plan goals in another month, or the equity plan in another month. And I am doing that on purpose because the data points for each of those are different. The data points for the Vision for Success goal are set on 1 year of equity data. The equity plan is based on a different set of information. Thank you, Chancellor's office. So just so you know, those two things will be coming to you.
Very good. Thank you all. I'm seeing there are no further business.
President Fowle, I would like to make one recommendation. So one of the things I proposed in, if I get to be the president of the league, would be really increasing professional development for trustee effectiveness. And so I know we talk about professional development for all of the staff, but I think that we as a board, as trustees, also need to engage in that. And so one of the things that came up is, not all trustees can make all conferences. I'm up in Sacramento a lot. I think it's way more than anybody really needs to be up there. But I think that it's an opportunity. This is for those trustees who cannot make all of those conferences. It would be worth it for us to look at some study sessions where we are addressing particular topics which would address some of that professional development, such as the Brown Act, should be a regular sort of training session for us. There may be other things that come up, the equity plan, which would be coming up. How do you look at financial data? I think we have 3 trustees who have been very competent and have been great resources to us, but it might be something that the rest of the board would benefit on. So I would just like to put that out for consideration for future agenda items.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brown?
So it sort of slipped my mind, but I would like to make a public announcement and inquiry to Dr. Olivo. Did the event where you were inducted in the Hall of Fame can you tell us a little bit about that? Has it happened?
It has not yet happened.
Good.
I will be inducted into the Social and Behavioral Sciences Hall of Fame at my undergraduate and master's degree alma mater, Cal State University, San Bernardino, this Friday.
It's this Friday.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just thought that was a great thing, and if I could go, I would be there.
Thank you.
But I wanted to congratulate you publicly, because we value you here at PCC, and I think that is just wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I
Congratulations.
appreciate that.
Okay, seeing no further business in front of this board, this meeting is adjourned.
Future board meeting dates are all squared away, right?
Yep.
I thought we were on future topics.